I keep seeing these massive ancient conspiracy charts popping up on social media that kind of connect everything from Atlantis to secret societies in one giant web, but I've never actually sat down and walked through one in detail until today. So we're going to go through this chart section by section. Real quick, a lot of this is new to me, so feel free to correct anything in the comments. Also, I'm going wherever this chart or rabbit hole takes me. That's it. So don't take me talking about something as proof of me believing it. You know what I mean. Anyway, how do you even start with something like this? Do you begin at the top with Baal worship? No, let's go in the middle. Right in the middle, you've got the pharaohs of Egypt, the gods Ra, Osiris, Set, the Sphinx, and the Hyksos. Now, I'm pretty sure this alludes to the fact that the Sphinx is way older than mainstream archaeologists want to admit, maybe 10,000 years or more. Anyway, some claim the Sphinx is guarding secrets from a lost civilization that predates the dynasties in Egypt, of which, in general, I believe is true, like 100%. But then you've got the Hyksos, and I didn't know anything about these guys. Basically, there were foreign shepherd kings, mostly Semitic or Canaanite people from the Levant area, I believe, who rolled into Egypt around 1650 BCE during a time of weakness called the Second Intermediate Period. They took control of northern Egypt and ruled for about a century, but eventually they got expelled because native Egyptian rulers in the south got fed up with foreign domination. Kings like Kammo started a war of liberation, and his successor, Ahmose I, finally finished the job around 1550 BCE. He besieged their capital at Avaris, drove them out, and reunified Egypt under native rule. This marked the beginning of what they call the New Kingdom, basically Egypt striking back and saying, no more foreigners are going to be running things around here. And then from here, the claim is that the expulsion of the Hyksos got flipped into the biblical Exodus story. This theory has been pushed in books like Ahmed Osman's Moses and Akhenaten. Now, if you're like me and don't have a deep background in this kind of stuff, let me try to break it down real quick. Akhenaten was an Egyptian pharaoh who basically said screw the old gods and tried to replace the entire Egyptian religion with worship of one single deity, the Aten. Now, the Aten was represented as a sun disk with rays coming down ending in little hands, like it was reaching out and giving life to the world. He even moved the capital and built a whole new city dedicated to this sun god. It was one of the first known attempts at monotheism in history. So in this conspiracy version of the story, Moses gets reimagined as Akhenaten. The big claim is that the guy who tried to force monotheism with the sun disk became the early blueprint for Yahweh, the single God of the Bible. And a lot of researchers tie this whole era into the so-called Brotherhood of the Snake, or Serpent Brotherhood. This is an alleged elite group that's been preserving forbidden knowledge since way before recorded history. The idea mainly comes from William Bramley's book, The Gods of Eden. According to him, this brotherhood was originally founded in ancient Mesopotamia by the godlike figure Ah, also known as Enki in Sumerian texts. Enki was one of the most important gods in Mesopotamia, the god of wisdom, water, magic, and creation. He's frequently shown with streams of water flowing from his shoulders, and in many ancient depictions, he's linked to serpents. He even carried the title Ushmagal, which literally means Great Serpent. So in this narrative, Enki is portrayed as the original serpent in the Garden of Eden, the one who wanted to give humanity knowledge and spiritual freedom, going against the other gods who prefer to keep humans in a more controlled, subservient state. And so they say the original goal of this Brotherhood of the Snake was supposedly to follow Enki's footsteps and liberate humanity through hidden or forbidden wisdom. But over time, as the story goes, the Brotherhood got corrupted or infiltrated. It flipped from a force of enlightenment into a tool for control. The same hidden power structures that allegedly runs through Egyptian mystery schools, Babylonian priesthoods, and, really, straight down through history. And that's why we see the serpent as a dual symbol pretty much everywhere. Enlightenment and wisdom on one side, but also manipulation and control on the other. And yeah, liberating humanity through wisdom while maintaining power through hidden structures sounds a lot like the Illuminati Code, doesn't it? It's also reminiscent of Aleister Crowley, Albert Pike, and Luciferianism in general, where Lucifer is seen as the light bearer, bringing enlightenment to humanity. Just saying. Alright, let's keep going. Now if we move up the chart, we're going to hit the fall of Atlantis, the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, the Druids, and the Sons of Belial. This is pure Edgar Cayce territory. Atlantis gets destroyed by a cataclysm, survivors flee to Egypt and Europe, seeding the priesthoods and druid orders of ancient Britain and Gaul. The Sons of Belial are the bad guys in Cayce's readings, corrupt Atlanteans who were into human sacrifice, materialism, and dark magic that supposedly contributed to the continent's downfall. David Icke fans and Manly P. Hall readers see this as the origin point for a global elite bloodline stretching back to prehistory, carrying advanced knowledge or agendas forward. And nearby on the chart you have Göbekli Tepe, massive T-shaped pillars carved by hunter-gatherers around 9600 BCE, predating agriculture and known civilizations by millennia. Mainstream archaeology calls it a ceremonial site that completely rewrites what we thought was possible for so-called primitive societies. But conspiracy circles go even further, and honestly, I'm with them on this one. They say it's evidence of lost advanced civilization survivors passing down knowledge after a global flood or comet event. And one thing's for sure, it absolutely pushes back the human history timeline. But it doesn't stop there. Just in the last couple of years, archaeologists have uncovered sites in the exact same Stone Hills region that go back even further, with structures dated to about 12,600 years ago. Mainstream archaeologists are blown away because it shows symbolic thinking and storytelling existed way earlier than they thought. But conspiracy circles see it as more proof of pre-flood civilizations. And yeah, that's exactly what it would be, wouldn't it? Either way, these discoveries make you realize we probably have no idea what our true history actually looks like. However, over on the top section, we have the Canaanites, the Phoenicians, Sumerians, and the Habiru nomads. So let me try to quickly break this down. These Sumerians were one of the earliest known civilizations in Mesopotamia. They gave us the first cities, writings, and epic stories like the Epic of Gilgamesh, which does include a flood story that looks very similar to the Noah story in the Bible. Anyway, the Canaanites lived in the Levant, which is modern Israel, Lebanon, Syria, that whole general area. Their high god was called El, a name that later appears in the Bible as one of the names for God. The Phoenicians were basically the seafaring, trading descendants of the Canaanites. They spread their culture, alphabets, and religious practices all across the Mediterranean. And then we've got the Habiru, wandering nomadic tribes or bands of outsiders who didn't belong to any fixed kingdom. Some researchers believe they were early Hebrews. Yeah, so the Habiru turned into Hebrews. Yeah. The thing is that all of these cultures overlapped heavily through trade, migration, and conquest, so their stories, gods, and flood myths bleed into each other all the time. Zecharia Sitchin readers jump straight to the Anunnaki, ancient astronaut theories, or gods handing down knowledge and maybe genetic tweaks to the Sumerians that later show up in the Bible. As I said, the Habiru get linked to early Hebrews, wandering tribes carrying forbidden lore across the region. Serpent cults pop up everywhere. The snake in Eden suddenly looks a lot less like temptation and more like a symbol of enlightenment or hidden wisdom in, Gnostic or pagan takes. Now, these cultures absolutely traded ideas, goods, and myths, no question. But at the very top of the chart is where things get a little spicy. We have Baal worship, Nimrod, Marduk, and the cult of Saturn. So in the lore, especially Alexander Hislop's The Two Babylons, Nimrod, the biblical mighty hunter who founded Babylon, gets deified after his death and becomes Marduk. Over time, that same figure morphs into Baal, the Canaanite storm, and a fertility god. The Phoenicians spread this worship complete with fertility rites and, in some darker accounts, child sacrifice to Moloch Baal. That's the package the Bible constantly rails against, but appears that our politicians really bought into. From here, we have the powerful priests of Karnak, the Amun-Ra priesthood in Egypt, and they're seen as the Egyptian side of the same machine. These guys controlled massive wealth and influence, sometimes rivaling the pharaohs themselves. Conspiracy circles view them as the ultimate guardians of mystery school knowledge. And then we've got the cult of Saturn, which researchers like David Icke trace back to these roots. Saturn as the hidden god, black cube symbolism, and an ancient system of cosmic law and control. All of it loops right back to the Brotherhood of the Snake, priesthoods hoarding forbidden knowledge, engineering society from the top down, and layering the same control mechanisms across various cultures. It's not organic evolution, it's deliberate design. Again, sounds awfully familiar to how things work today, doesn't it? But let's swing over to the right side of the chart, Moses and the Tablets of Law. That's the 10 Commandments. Now on the chart, this connects back to the Hyksos and forward to the Babylonian exile. Now, conspiracy takes on the Exodus say the plagues weren't purely divine miracles, but actually were exaggerated memories of real disasters. One popular theory points to a massive volcanic eruption that happened around 1628 BCE, which could explain the darkness, the hail, and the blood-red Nile waters. Some people still push that Moses was either a Hyksos prince or straight up connected to Akhenaten himself, basically exporting the Egyptian monotheism idea to the tribes. And then comes the Babylonian captivity in 586 BCE. So Nebuchadnezzar destroyed the first temple in Jerusalem and forcibly exiled the Judean elite to Babylon. This was a massive turning point. The chart shows that this period reshaped Judaism in general. Because while in exile, the Jews absorbed ideas and came back with the Talmud and heavy Zoroastrian influence. Now apparently Zoroastrianism is an ancient Persian religion, and it helped introduce good versus evil dualism, apparently. They claim this fed directly into later Jewish and Christian concepts like Satan, angels, demons, and the afterlife. Now the Freemasons love this part because it portrays Moses as an initiate in Egyptian mystery schools, carrying sacred geometry, rituals, and the language of the mysteries into the Temple of Solomon. Kabbalah shows up here too, presented as hidden mystical codes embedded within the Torah, allegedly mixing Egyptian and Babylonian esoteric knowledge. Manly P. Hall in The Secret Teachings of All Ages and Albert Pike in Morals and Dogma treat this whole lineage like the foundational blocks for every single secret society that came after. For example, Albert Pike explicitly says that Moses learned the doctrines from Egyptian initiates. The all-seeing eye, that famous Masonic symbol on the dollar bill, traces back to Osiris and Horus. And Manly P. Hall maps how Egyptian, Chaldean, and Greek mystery schools influence modern Masonic rituals, initiations, death and rebirth allegories like the Osiris story, and the whole idea of preserving ancient wisdom for a select few. However, down in the bottom right, you've got Judea, Solomon's Temple, David, Solomon, the Queen of Sheba, and money magic. So, in the lore, Solomon's Temple isn't just a religious site, it's portrayed as a full-on mystery school. According to these stories, King Solomon, aided by the Queen of Sheba, who brought knowledge from Ethiopia or Yemen or something, well, they turned the temple into a hub for alchemy, sacred geometry, and ancient architecture. They also claim that Atlantean tech was stored inside the Ark of the Covenant, and Graham Hancock goes pretty hard on that topic. Now, the money magic label points straight at the money changers that Jesus famously overturned, and of course, later banking families. Yeah, you know where this is going. The Rothschild bloodline theories, claims of occult financial control, all the way to modern central banking critiques. One thing's for sure, history, and really, even prehistory, shows networks of influence and wealth concentration, with certain bloodlines popping up consistently. Makes you wonder. Finally, let's move on to the bottom left. This section brings us the Roman Empire, Sol Invictus, Mithraism, and the birth of Christianity. So yeah, this section shows how sun worship gets adopted by the Roman emperors. One big promoter was Emperor Aurelian, who made Sol Invictus an official state god in 274 CE. And then after that comes the famous story of Emperor Constantine. Right before the Battle of Milvian Bridge, he supposedly had a vision of a cross in the sky with the words, "In this sign, conquer." And he said, oh shit, we gotta go to war because God is on our side. And yeah, he wins the battle, converts to Christianity, and basically merges the old sun worship with the new Christian faith to help unify a fracturing empire. A lot of people claim this is why the birthday of Jesus was moved to December 25th, and that's because it perfectly lined up with the big festival for Sol Invictus. However, they also mention Mithraism, a very popular mystery cult among Roman soldiers. Mithras was said to be born on December 25th, had 12 companions, died and rose again after 3 days, and had rituals involving bull sacrifice that some say echo Christian communion. You guys remember the movie Zeitgeist? Well, they really pushed those parallels pretty hard, but scholars like Bart Ehrman say it was more natural blending in the Roman cultural soup than straight copying. He says, and I quote, "Ideas, symbols, and festivals flowed both ways in a diverse, multi-region empire. It was more natural blending than straight-up theft," end of quote. Alright, so that's basically everything. When you pull back and look at the whole chart from a 37,000 foot view or whatever, one thing really stands out. This isn't just ancient history. It feels like this lays out the prototype for how power and hidden knowledge has been passed down for thousands of years. That Brotherhood of the Snake, Egyptian mystery schools, and the Temple of Solomon initiations, they didn't vanish when empires fell. They got rebranded and layered into groups like the Freemasons, the Rosicrucians, and the Bavarian Illuminati. And today, we can point to Bohemian Grove, Skull and Bones, or their weird spirit cooking rituals that the upper echelons of politics really seem to love. Manly P. Hall and Albert Pike trace Masonic rituals and symbols straight back to Egyptian priesthoods. The groups that these guys started, they weren't random social clubs. They were selective networks preserving special knowledge, while quietly influencing politics and finance from the shadows, through oaths and symbols that mirror ancient initiations. And then if we fast forward to 1776 with Adam Weishaupt and the founding of the Illuminati, it's a group pushing enlightenment rationalism, the end of monarchies and religious dogma, and a perfectible society ruled by reason and a small, enlightened elite. Weishaupt recruited heavily from Masonic lodges too, using their structure of degrees and secrecy, creating a system of mutual surveillance and coded communication. Elite grooming, infiltration of existing power structures, and a small class at the top steering events. Sound familiar? Yeah, that's because we're still living it. The symbolism carries over too, the all-seeing eye, as an example. It came from Egyptian Ra, Osiris, and Horus stories. Well, that symbol shows up on the US dollar and in corporate logos. I even found some theories that argue the dark faction, Sons of Belial, eventually evolved into the technocratic wing of this global aristocracy. No longer performing rituals in robes or anything like that, but instead doing their bidding through algorithms. You know, we're kind of living through the same old playbook right now. They're trying to break the old order, create the conditions for something new, and then position themselves as the indispensable architects at the top, once again. Kinda sounds exactly like the ancient priesthoods managing society through religion and ritual, now updated for the digital age. Kinda feels like that, doesn't it? The key point, none of this is organic evolution, it's deliberate design, repeated across millennia. The old system used temples and initiations, the new one uses exclusive clubs, think tanks, and global political networks. It's the same game, just a different era. And that's why these charts kinda hit different when you really understand them, because they show a long, unbroken thread. From Atlantis survivors seeding priesthoods, through the pharaohs and mystery schools, through Albert Pike, Manly P. Hall, and William Bramley, all the way through today's elite circles and everything in between. It's all connected. Alright, that's all I have for you. Let me know if you like this topic, because there's an even bigger and crazier chart we can get into next time. If you're up for it, let me know. Until next time, once again, this is Helio Wave. If you like the content, like, comment, and subscribe. Share the video if you want to. If you're in a position to, consider subscribing on Locals, or you can use PayPal. As always, make sure you disobey those true fascistas, and yes, I do hope you have a good night.